Good morning. Once again, those of you using Twitter, you can tell all your friends on your Twitter feed that you are listening to The Largest Minority, the Disability Affairs program on WBAI 99.5 in New York. And right now, we're going to hear from Amy Meisner-Threet on a group called RIPPD, Rights for Imprisoned People with Psychiatric Disabilities. Amy.
Good morning. I'm Amy Meisner-Threet. As we've discussed previously on The Largest Minority, many individuals with mental health problems find themselves caught in the legal system, cycling in and out of incarceration without getting the care and treatment that they need. Furthermore, we can all remember recent stories of people with psychological problems who have been harmed or killed by New York City police, and it seems that the NYPD has not taken any serious steps to address this problem. Enter the group RIPPD, Rights for Imprisoned People with Psychiatric Disabilities, a grassroots direct action organization united to demand justice and social change for imprisoned people with psychiatric disabilities. The group includes people with psychiatric disabilities who have suffered in the system, their families and friends, and community organizers. Their goals include establishing alternatives to incarceration, pre-booking jail diversion in the NYPD, better mental health care for those who are in the prison system, and community crisis intervention teams, such as those used in other cities around the nation. I spoke with Leah Gitter, a longtime member of RIPPD, who talked about how the group came about and some of the solutions they advocate, including community crisis intervention teams.
And we needed an organization, and RIPPD is doing a wonderful job of trying to reduce the amount of people that are going into the prison and jail system. And right now, nothing really has reduced those numbers, because every day at Rikers there are at least 4,000 people with mental illness. And in the state system, Department of Correctional Services, the prison population in New York State has gone from 71,000 to now it's about 58 or 59,000. But the people with mental illness problems has risen. I think the number's about 19%. So what's happening is they're keeping the prisons filled by various populations that they always do. Now we're focused on this population. And the idea of RIPPD is to make sure that we stop putting people with psychiatric disabilities in jails or prison, because it doesn't accomplish anything for anybody, and it's really cruel and unusual punishment.
Right, and they're not getting the psychiatric care that they need to function in society.
Right, but they're trying to adjust that and put programs and put things in the prisons, but it doesn't work, and it's really the community is where people have to be to get treatment, and we have to start at all levels. And so the CIT program is one of the points that we could really go to.
Excuse me, Leah, what does CIT stand for?
Crisis Intervention Team.
Okay.
And RIPPD is calling it Community Crisis Intervention Teams, because it is a community collaboration, which takes in mental health providers, law enforcement, family, and consumer advocates, all are part of crisis intervention teams. And these teams are all over the country, and they function very well. And I have been seeing people at different conferences come from Chicago and come from upstate New York, from Rochester. People came down, police officers from Troy, New York, people from Florida, and they only have these positive things to say about the outcomes for initiating crisis intervention teams in their community. And so this is a mainstream program for mainstream cops, and we're having a lot of resistance from the NYPD and just being open to hearing about it, maybe trying it in a precinct or in one area, a command, and see what it's like and see how much it accomplishes, because the goals are very concrete and they work. It's a crime reduction model. It keeps officers safe. It keeps people with a psychiatric disability safe and and alive. Mm-hmm. It connects people to services, and it's cost effective.
Great.
So it means it's cheaper to take people for treatment, to get them treatment, than to put them into a jail or a prison, which is very costly. I mean, of course, at Rikers, something like $170 a day, $60,000 a year to keep somebody in jail. Mm-hmm. And in the state system, it's also much more expensive than if you would treat people. So the idea is to save the taxpayers' money and to get help for people who need help, and that is the goal. And so we're really working on trying to bring this crisis intervention teams into New York and to educate the communities around New York about how important this is for everyone.
I also spoke with Lisa Ortega, the community organizer of RIPPD. She told me of an incident that occurred in September of 2008, one of the many stories that illustrate the problems faced by people with psychiatric disabilities when dealing with the NYPD.
A man named Iman Morales, who was 35 years old, who is diagnosed bipolar, was going through a episode. So he was kind of erratic, wasn't too sure what was going on. There was nothing violent with him. He was just disoriented. And he just got manic one day, which was the same day he actually had an appointment to see his psych because they had actually changed his medication. So he was feeling disoriented, kind of strange, and was a bit manicky because of the change of medication. And he ended up standing outside of his ledge, his window on a ledge that was 10 feet off the ground. He had just taken a shower and had a towel on. When he climbed out the window, the towel fell, so he was naked on this ledge. His mother was actually there with him to go with him to the doctor. They were very close. She didn't know who to call, so she called 911, and they called in a specialized emotionally disturbed unit, which is a unit that's actually supposed to be dealing with people that have mental illness. They came in, and they actually gave the order to taser him.
Wasn't he a fairly, I remember from, probably a lot of people are remembering this case, he was a fairly big man. He wasn't like a small man. But the taser...
He was a big man, yes.
And the taser took him down, correct?
Immediately. I mean, it freezes you. It renders you helpless. You can't move. And there was about maybe, the ledge is very tiny. The ledge itself is a small ledge, and he could barely stand there without a couple of feet in front of him, so it was a small ledging to begin with. So obviously if you taser him, he's going to tense up and freeze. Anyone can tell you he was going to fall, and there was no anything to brace his fall. So. Okay,
so what happened?
Well, he died. He died immediately from the fall. I mean, there was no acts of violence. There was no, I'm going to kill you, or nothing like that was ever said. He was just on the ledge, confused, disoriented, and they decided that was the best way to remove him from the ledge. His mother said, let me get to him. I can try to talk him down, or at least put down a mattress, she kept saying. And they pushed her aside, wouldn't let her get near the window from inside the apartment, and they just did what they did. And we were out there today doing outreach, and a lot of people from the neighborhood that saw it were commenting that they never forgot that day, and just how insane it was for NYPD to do what they did.
Okay. So what happened to the officers after? What was the upshot of the case?
Well, of course, the main officer that gave the okay, he ended up committing suicide a week later. He took his own life.
Wow.
And I mean, this goes to show that this is a no-win situation on either side with the way that NYPD deals with these type of calls. I mean, 2 lives were lost that day, one by the hands of NYPD, and one, he took his own life because of this guilt about what happened. So it's tragic either which way you look at it.
Both Ms. Ortega